Welcome to the Aim Higher podcast. I'm Jason Cloessner, and we got a very special guest today. We have Andrew Gore from Smith Wesson and Bobby Tyler from Tyler GunWorks. Now, this isn't our normal format, but we're super excited to be talking about the new LIPSEY'S exclusive Smith Wesson Mountain Gun series. Guys, thank y'all for coming. We just kind of wanted to have kind of an informal chat about the development and what all it took to get this gun to the market.
Yeah, I guess, so it started out December of 2022. So for context, I started at Smith Wesson in June of 2022.
Yep.
December of 2022, I was doing a executive briefing to our executive team on revolvers. And one of the recommendations I had was that we should get rid of the internal locks. And the president, Mark Smith, agreed. Said, I think it's the right time to do that. Obviously, easier said than done.
Yeah, we had a conversation with him about that a few times as well.
Yeah, and that is a good point to make, that unbeknownst to me, because you and I hadn't met at that point, you and other LIPSEY'S executives had been in the background prior to that talking to Mark about this issue.
Yeah.
And, talking that obviously you wanted to do a lot of exclusives, but you didn't want to have internal locks in the revolvers. So I wasn't aware of that at that time. So thank you for...
It was pretty serendipitous that the world, our two worlds collided at the same time, right when Smith & Wesson wanted to start looking at entertaining exclusives. Yep. And we had two guys who really had a passion for revolvers and wanted to get rid of the locks. So it was kind of good timing.
That's it. And then, so SHOT 2023 was when you and I first met and started talking about all the exclusives, which ran into, then became the UC. And then now we, fantastically are able to bring the mountain guns to market.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we kind of talked about when we were doing these guns is like, hey, maybe the first editions can be special or maybe do something a little different to them. And so, of course, obviously, our first reaction is we got to talk to Bobby Tyler and see what we can do about maybe dressing these guns up. I mean, and then originally it was going to be maybe just for the first 100 guns or something like that. And I'll let Bobby talk a little bit about his process of getting into the more of the mainstream grip business. But, we wanted to look at doing some grips and maybe some upgraded sights, stuff like that. And then what Bobby came up with when we all went up to Springfield to have our meeting, when we sat that gun on the table, we're like, no, they have to all be this way. It would be a travesty just to do 100 or so like this. This really needs to be the run. So I kind of internally in my head have kind of referred to this as the Mountain Gun Deluxe, because it really has had a few little upgrades over what we can traditionally think of as a mountain gun. So Bobby, to kind of get you into the conversation here a little bit, talk about how you kind of got into the grip business. It's been a pretty quick process.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Well, I'd like to start off by saying this was an exciting project for me just because I love the mountain revolvers.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned mountain revolver, and I asked, where do I sign?
Yeah.
And so anyway, it was a no-brainer for me. So basically, we've been in the custom grip business for several years. And of course, we're a finished company, but along with that, guns need grips, but they need to fit. They need to fit your hand. They need to be functional. Mm-hmm. They need to look good, but they got to feel good. And they not only need to feel good in your hand, but they got to feel good under recoil while you're using them. The important things that the average person sometimes doesn't think about. They think, oh, these grips feel good. Yeah. Well, then they go to the range,
right,
and they're like, man, something keeps poking me.
I hear that all the time. Guy goes to the gun store, something feels great at the gun counter, then he goes to the range, puts a few rounds through it, and he's instantly looking online trying to find replacements. Right. And we tried to, with this project, bypass all that headache. Here it is, out of the box. This thing's ready to go.
So this is basically the revolver that you don't have to accessorize. It's done.
It's done.
Everything that you could possibly want to do to it is done. So back to the grip deal. So our grips had been hand fit one at a time, every pair. I mean, that was the only process we had. And so, SHOT Show 24.
Yep.
Not even quite a year ago.
Yeah, not quite a year ago.
There's
as of
we
today.
Laugh.
And so Jason says, "Hey, I've got somebody I want you to meet. I want to just throw something at you here. I said, okay, well, let's go and look at it, because I had been kind of looking at the idea of potentially buying a high volume CNC grip machine. And so we go in and we basically go into a meeting, and I came out of the meeting, I told Jason, I said, well, apparently I'm in the grip business now. So,
so what are you doing here? You better get to work, buddy.
So I'm catching the red eye, So anyway, and they had, on a trip that they had been on, they had actually found a guy who had a ton of just amazing wood.
Yeah.
And not only was it amazing wood, it was small pieces.
Right.
There were cutoffs of high end
location.
High grade walnut stalks,
Yeah.
and all these big chunks had been saved, and it was absolutely perfect for somebody to start a grip business.
Yeah.
It really kind of all worked out. We had the perfect project, the perfect source of supply. Wood came up, and somebody who was just wanting to get into it and didn't already have a bunch of prior commitments. And that's one of the things people got to remember is when you're working these projects, it's not so easy just to call up a vendor and say, hey, we're going to need this by this date, because they might already have contractual obligations for a certain amount of their grips or sights or whatever already in place. And so you got to just get in line. So it kind of was, to take this project and go from zero to completion in the amount of time that we did is really kind of unheard of for this level of a product.
I mean, and I can't understate, you and I were talking about high-grade grips for some of the projects. We just couldn't find anyone who could actually supply our needs.
Right.
All of the really good high-end custom grip makers out there can't do the volume that we need.
Correct.
A lot of the other OEMs, trying to get access to the actual quality of walnut that we were putting on these guns, that was a problem. They didn't have great sources to be able to do the volume that we needed.
Right.
And so we didn't have any real solutions, which is why we ended up approaching
We
Bobby.
strong-armed this guy.
Yeah. And fortunately, you said yes.
Yeah. So basically, before I left SHOT, I bought a full in-house CNC setup, a pretty large production setup, and get back, and I'm like, okay, well, now I need a building. I need a, because our facility in Friona, we had a lot of space. It was an old golf course there, and we've gone in and pieced together our facility as, finished shop, retail. We've got kind of different divisions within. So now there was a place, and so right where it sits used to be the practice putting green. And so right on the practice putting green now.
Finally got something worth having here.
Right. So there, we built a 100 by 40 building dedicated to grip production. And so in the first area of it, you've got wood storage, which we have to keep, because you got to think about.
Things got to keep dry.
You got to think about the dry. You got to think about, keeping the products where they're accessible. And then not only that, now you got this block. And so what we did is we went in and sawed them into blanks. And we took the blanks and we stabilized them. And we stabilize them with a cactus juice is what it's called. And it's a product that goes in and you basically put it under air pressure and you suck the moisture out of it for like 12 hours. And then you go up to the valve and you turn this valve, and immediately all that cactus juice liquid that it's soaking in, when you pull that air off of it that's been sucking on it for 12 hours, it goes like a sponge and just whoosh, and so it just floods into the pores of this wood.
Which makes it super durable.
It does. So basically, when we were sampling this, we'd take a block and go out into the big warehouse. We'd throw a block 16 foot in the air, bounce it off the concrete, pick it up and go put it on the machine. I mean, it made it to a, and so the reason I'm saying this is, areas that are prone to crack on walnut grips, and I'm not talking about right now. I'm looking out for 20, 30 years from now when people are saying, you know what, man, I'm glad these guys put walnut grips on.
And it also helped too, because this gun could be in the humid area of Louisiana, and then you might move to Arizona, where it's dry as all get out, And I know a lot of people who've had really custom wood stocks or stag or whatever, and they take it to a different humidity level environment, and all of a sudden their grips don't fit.
Yeah.
So this stabilization should prevent all that.
Yeah. So once these are stabilized, then you almost have like an epoxy, a hard resin where the wood block's not even perfectly flat anymore. So then we have to go back to the shop and go back through a flattening process, get them flat again, and from there they go onto the CNC machine and go through our steps and our jigs and our, go through this process to manufacture the grip panel. Once the grip panel comes off, it's just got machined, and so it has to be sanded. Yeah. There's no other way to do it than to have people sand them. And so, when we wanted to bring a custom grip, these are custom grips, but they're not hand sanded to each individual gun. But when they come off the machine, we do hand sand them to our jigs and basically to gauge,
the factory gauges.
Factory gauges.
Yeah.
And
it's as good as you're going to get without shipping an individual gun to a custom grip maker.
Yeah.
I mean,
without taking paper and individually sanding it to the frame.
Right.
It's about as close as you can
And that's
get.
the big challenge, is doing custom work on a scale that's accessible and affordable to consumers. And that's one thing. People love everything custom, but they don't want to pay it, or some people can't afford it.
Yep.
And our goal is to have something that you can, out of the box, be reasonably priced and be 98% of what that custom gun would be. And that was the goal from the beginning with this gun. And really to pull that off in a 12-month window, it's really pretty amazing. And that's, it was a testament to what you guys have really done for this project.
Well, there's been some key players that I've leaned on to, I've got an incredible staff and people that I've worked with that's been so important to help me get to where I'm at in this. And I mean, because basically, have you ever woke up one morning and said, I'm going to, because the custom grip business, we make a lot of stag, ram's horn, we did walnut, but basically we'd take a block, drill a hole in it, and start shaving it off with a rasp,
from there.
And this is a totally different perspective.
Right.
And to be able to do it on a level that hits distributorship, that's a whole nother deal. So,
and to keep a gun that MSRP is under $1,200. It's $11.99 on this gun. When you think about that, that is a tremendous value. I mean, these stocks. I mean, these are expensive if you were to buy these, on a custom level. Having just the mountain guns themselves, the old ones, command a huge premium on the used market. That's the one thing I kind of want to talk about is kind of the history of the mountain gun as well, and kind of what it is. The original mountain guns came out in the late 1980s, and I think they were first marketed as a mountain revolver, and then they changed to mountain gun in the early 90s. I got mine in 1993. My dad bought himself one and me one for Christmas that year, and I mean, that was my first double-action big bore revolver, and that's the only double-action revolver that I shot for a pretty good long time. And I really, honestly, at that point, didn't really feel a need for another one. I mean, even though I loved guns and wanted all I could get, I really couldn't find an instance where there was something else that would do what this gun could do. It was fairly light. It was stainless steel. Shot well. It's powerful if I wanted to be. With 44 specials, it was very manageable. And, I kind of monkeyed around with different grips and sights over the years and kind of finally fell on a combination that's basically this. And it's what we kind of wanted to recreate. And
with that, when you were messing with grips, the style of grips that you ended up with was actually the pattern that I bought out.
Exactly.
And
I want to get into that. The grips themselves, these are a bear hug style grip. And for those who are not familiar with bear hug, or maybe have heard that term and not really familiar with it, Deacon Deason started that company back in we ascertained the late 60s. And you gotta remember, set yourself back in the late 1960s. The double action revolver was king. There was no striker fired polymer auto pistols. all of law enforcement carried revolvers. Most people carried revolvers. I mean, there was 1911s and high powers, and I don't know, was a Smith Model 39 might have been out by that time, but it was all in its, auto pistols were really not accepted in the LE world, and would you consider the gunfighters of that era, where they carried double action revolvers. A lot of them carried big bore double action revolvers.
And shameless plug for our company, but Smith and Wesson was the main game.
Oh, it was king.
When you look at volume, I mean, people will talk about some of our competitors, but the reality is when it came to volume, Smith and Wesson was absolute king.
It's funny. We always laugh. That era, the Smith & Wesson Model 19 was king, and now the Glock 19 is king. So the 19 is like, you gun companies out there listening, the Model 19 is the number system I would probably use on your next successful gun. But, and so when these grips came out, at that time, Smith & Wesson used, their target style stocks. They were fairly blocky, fairly big. And Deacon, Target or Magnum. And Deacon, I believe worked with Skeeter Skelton on this design. And Skeeter liked a more slimmed, kind of contoured stock that was not checkered, had a slight palm swell in it, and was really conducive to double action shooting. A lot of those big target grips really were more applicable to using the gun in single action mode. And so these grips and this style were designed during the golden era of revolvers, when revolvers were king, by people who are actually using them, what we consider old school lawmen. And these guys, so they put a lot of thought and effort into this design. And I believe those grips ran into maybe the early to mid 90s.
Yeah, I think that's what we talked about.
Yeah.
Maybe around 93.
Yeah, somewhere in that timeline, Deacon had passed away, and his predecessor, Ted Adamovich, started the company called Blue Magnum grips. So some of you might be familiar with Blue Magnum. The grips that I had on my gun were made by Ted. They're Blue Magnums. And Ted was a fellow shootist and a really great guy. Well, Ted passed away a few years ago, and I'll kind of let you pick up the story from there.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to go in, and they said, well, there's some guns available here and this and that. And I went in and I said, what about all this grip stuff? This is history. This is like a little miniature museum right here.
Right.
Because the patterns were not just Ted's patterns, but they were also patterns of his predecessor. And so I said, well, what if I buy all this? What if I buy the whole design? What if I buy all of the grips?
The rights to those patterns.
Everything. And so anyway,
they said
here
yes.
we are. Yeah. So, and at the time I thought, well, put this on a back shelf and we'll need it someday.
Right.
And went in and, man, fast forward to grip production, we're in there, we're getting programs drawn, because we had the patterns didn't mean the programs were actually drawn to go into the CNC machine.
Right. They were not CNC in those grips back in the 1960s and 70s.
Which, when he went in to draw these, they're taking these 3D scales and they're turning it around and shrinking this and that. I mean, it's a huge ongoing.
Well, and also you have to design it to be mass assembled, and not just hand fitted like a lot of the grips were done back in those days. So you have to take that all in consideration. With those guns back in those days were manufactured differently than what you guys how you're manufacturing now. So it's not just as easy as, here's a design, put it in the computer and let it roll. There was a lot of effort.
So we were talking about the meeting that we went up to Springfield and was looking, and when we were talking, we were talking about grips for different models and stuff, and I had built a set of K-frames in this pattern, in this design, and they were a pair that we literally just built by hand just to have a pair, because I thought, let's go ahead and just show this. I'm there.
Right.
And that's when it just kind of clicked and made sense. And now it's hard to think about it without them.
Yeah. At that point, the idea was we would just put the Hogue rubbers and the standard grips, and then maybe do a small deluxe run with the upgrade. But once we all there was probably 7 or 8 of us in that room, some of the engineers, and once everybody passed that around, they were like, well, we got to go with this.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be a travesty not to.
So basically, you take your hand and you place the grip in it. And what the design of this, which, I say this all the time, the craftsmen of the past are what us from the future aspire to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so much talent, and I say this to my team all the time. They did more with less.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, because even Ted's facility there, he had a CNC router type thing that was nothing like. I mean, like our setup that we do this on is absolutely state of the art, second to none. I mean, it's hard for me to believe.
Yeah.
You know, I go in there and I just watch it. You know, I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. But anyway, so to take this grip and the way it's designed and the way that they got it to where it dissipates the recoil, it stays in your hand. You know, you go in, you take a shot, your follow-up shot, it didn't move. It didn't slip in your hand. It didn't ride up. It didn't go down. It's not uncomfortable.
When we shot these guns, I was like really pleasantly surprised of how comfortable the recoil was and how quick the recovery was on these guns. You know, you've got nice flats where you need it and roundness other places where you need it. Like I said, those guys really knew what they were doing back then. And you know, one of the things that another thing you have to do when you're building a custom grip for a certain person. I know when I had my grips built by Blue Magnum by Ted, I had to sketch my hand, and I had to actually mail him a sketch of my hand versus he goes, don't fax it because the fax can distort it. I mean, that's how precise he wanted to be with it. And then, of course, he built those stocks around my hand size. So when we were doing these, one of the things we had to take into consideration is you got everything from very small hands to big pawed gorillas out there that are gonna potentially buy and use these guns. So we had to make it try to work for everybody. And you did a great job of really tweaking the flare at the bottom and everything to where we put these in several people's different style hand sizes. And I hadn't have anybody to say, "Wow, this works for me."
So the prototype when I took it, I said, this is a bear hug grip, but it's a modified bear hug.
Sure.
It's got our splash to it.
Yep.
Because if you can't fit the majority of the population's hand,
right,
you can't put it out on a production model.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
And and we've talked about being able to have the speed loader area.
Yep.
And your palm swell is not just a right-handed palm swell.
It's both.
But it's both. And so, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable for either shooter.
No.
And then the way this hourglass type taper works here and the lines and the way it all ties together.
It just looked right.
Just fit.
It just looked good. And there are no finger grooves.
Right,
finger grooves on grips.
Yeah. So along that, the problem for finger grooves, there's finger grooves in the market. There's great grips with finger grooves. But me personally, and what I found, that you don't grip it the same every time.
Yeah.
And so maybe you miss a finger groove.
Right.
Maybe you grab high in the groove. Maybe you grab low in the groove. So what we wanted to do is to be able to make the most comfortable, functional, cosmetically pleasing grip possible.
Well, I think you did it. You did it in spades. No problem using HKS speed loaders in these. Super, super happy with the stocks on these guns. I mean, to me, that really is what sets them off. I think that's what people are going to really, take a notice of. But Andrew, we didn't just stop there. We had to add a few other little bells and features. And one of the things that I had done on my gun personally was change from the ramp type sight, because I found that serrated ramps, especially just in black, they tend to wash out for me, especially when it gets dim. It gets a little tough to see. So I've kind of always favored kind of a modified Patridge, so kind of a slanted, serrated front sight. But if anybody's been paying attention to, we obviously love gold bead front sights around here, and it seems like the market does too. And so I kind of challenged Andrew with adding that, because something that Smith Wesson hadn't done yet, or this to style at least. And you guys took it and ran with it.
I mean, we had some in our DX sight system, but as far as the pin front, we haven't done it in a long time.
Yeah.
And so it was, let's start again and let's get this going. And so the senior design engineer who worked on these mountain guns, Brett Curry, the guy's a genius.
Brett's the guy. Yeah. He's the guy.
And so he came up with some various CAD designs, which I sent to you, and there was some tweaking of those initial designs, and
Yeah. At first, the first iteration was pretty much a straight up, Patridge, and I was like, man, if you can cut a little bit of angle, and he's like, well, you still got to put that bead in there, and I'm like, well, just see what you can do, and Brett, to his credit, he sent something back and said, oh, you're getting there, and then he's like, all right, and then finally he's got it to about where, and I looked, and it's funny, I pulled my gun out and put it next to this, it's the exact same angle, and I was like, perfect, and it's .125 wide, so it's, it's the right narrow, it's not super big, it's serrated, so it cuts glare. That bead, it's at the top, but it doesn't go above the top ledge. So you can still align your sights like a traditional sight picture for distance, but up close and quick, you can sink that bead into that notch and make a pretty quick, nice shot. So they did a great job on that. Another thing that we really wanted to do that is not common anymore with you guys is on the hammer and trigger, do the flash chrome.
Yeah, we just thought, obviously you and I thought it just is going to look better with this package.
Yeah. It's kind of what the traditional mountain guns had.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And, I think for this particular gun and with all the different accents we've done with the gold bead front sight, the grips, I think it was the right decision to go with the flash chrome.
I think so too. And we also went with the narrow hammer and the narrow trigger, which the originals had.
Yeah.
And again, that harkens back to the old times. Those guys, they liked the narrow hammer and triggers because they were shooting these guns double action.
Yeah.
And they were trying to shoot them fast, and they were having to come out of a holster quick and potentially save their life with those guns. And so if you go back and look at a lot of those guns from that era, a lot of them either narrowed those triggers by custom, or they installed narrow triggers so they could get in there and work that double action trigger pretty effectively. They did a great job. It just looks right on these guns, in my opinion. The tapered barrel on the mountain gun, to me, is just the classic look. Yeah. The mountain guns, to me, blend the best of old Smith & Wesson and new Smith & Wesson. So you have all the endurance enhancements and the newer metallurgy and the stainless steel of today, but you have the graceful lines of yesterday. The old 1926 model 44 specials, and just the older 50s era, what we consider really the classic Smith end-frame fighting guns at that time. The mountain gun really gives you that same look and feel and balance, but it also has the advantage of shooting 44 Magnum in it if you want. So it's really kind of, to me, the mountain gun is really the perfect model 624, 44 special, it gives you the best of everything.
Yep.
The round butt gives you a lot of different grip options. You can go round to square like what we put on here, or if you want to conceal this gun, or if you just want round butt grips, you can take them off and you can have something pretty small in here.
Absolutely.
Very well might end up seeing some of those.
You might. You never know. You never know. You never know. But it's that. Those are the kind of things that just really make this model special. And we're not just doing it in 44 Magnum though. We're also doing it in a different model as well.
Yep, we're doing the 686 at launch.
Yep.
We'll leave it at that as far as. But it's. Everyone knows now where the trajectory that we're going between LIPSEY'S and Smith & Wesson with the exclusives. So, there'll be more. Yeah.
So 629. There's the classic. That's the original mountain gun, the 44 Magnum. Now, a little bit. They kind of were talking about the history a little earlier, but that gun came out in the late '80s, and it kind of originated. I talked to several of the guys who were part of the origination of that, because I said, tell me the story. What really happened? And so I called my friend Ross Seifert. Ross is, if anybody who grew up in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s and read Guns and Ammo or Hand Loader magazine or Rifle magazine, they know Ross Seifert. He's, in my opinion, probably the one of not the greatest gun writers we hear. And Ross is retired from writing now, but we still keep in touch. And I knew that Ross was involved in that original discussion. And so I called him the other day and said, Ross, so tell me the story. What really happened? In a typical Ross fashion, like most good things, we had a few cocktails, and we started talking, and him and Tommy Campbell who worked at Smith Wesson at the time. Tommy just passed away, but Tommy was a great guy, one of the greatest competitive shooters out there, but a real revolver fan. My old friend Mike Martin was involved in this process too. Mike was a rep at Smith Wesson for a long time. He retired from Ruger a couple years ago. Mike and I have hunted all over the country together, and he is one of the absolute best shots I've ever seen. Him and Tommy used to shoot team challenge together for Smith Wesson with Michael Plaxco.
Oh, really?
So they were the real deals.
Yeah.
These guys were, this back when industry guys were shooters.
Yep.
And these guys were. And it's funny, when one of the hunts that Mike and I went on, he was pulling out his guns and getting geared up, and I said, what are you carrying today? Oh, my mountain gun. And I was like, there you go. And so, but anyways, so I talked to both Mike and I talked to Ross, and pretty much what Ross's idea was at the time is to bring back, a tapered barrel gun of that 50s, 40s era type Smith & Wesson, and to do the Black Panther chamfer on the front of the cylinder. And Tommy kind of went back to the factory and built the gun around that and tried to make it as light as possible. And that's why they came with the round butt and did what they did. And Ross actually got the very first gun. And he went out and he wrote it up in Guns and Ammo back in, I think it was 87, 88, something like that. And, and Ross said, he said, hey, look, these guns had some recoil back then, with it. Because Ross was kind of known for heavy loads. But he settled on a 280 grain wide flat nose around 1,000 feet per second, which he said, I don't handle anything I want to shoot. But he said, like he said, the gun made a fantastic 44 special with the ability to shoot magnums if you want it. Kind of like the same concept Bill Jordan had with the Model 19. Yep. A gun that was made for shoot 38 specials, but you could shoot the magnums if you wanted to. Now, we put these guns on the scale, and they're like 39 ounces. Yep. No, 30. I think it was 38 ounces. Yeah. It was 38 ounces, and one of my old original mountain guns with the rubber grips was actually, I think, 39 and a half.
Yeah, it was heavier.
It was heavier. So this gun's actually attack lighter. You think about it. This gun is only 2 ounces heavier than a Model 19. I don't know, 4-inch 19.
And this is the thing I think I'm glad that we did the mountain gun as the first no lock with LIPSEY'S. Large frame.
We hadn't even talked about the lock yet.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. But it's a great overall package. Super versatile. I mean, for someone who we have to remember now, and I wouldn't say I was a revolver expert before I came on at the company. I've had to school myself up a lot in the last 2.5 years. But
you've done well.
Yeah. For those who don't really know, I mean, if you look at a lot of our other 629 models, they have either with a heavier barrel profile or with a full lug. The way they hold in your hand, it's very different, and there is a lot more weight there. Yeah. And so for someone who's wanting a sort of versatile, do-everything revolver, this is actually a great way to go.
It is. It kind of is that happy middle ground because you do have like the 329s, which are the Scandium guns, which I think come around 27, 28 ounces. And it's almost too much of a good thing. Yeah, they're awesome to carry. Yep. I mean, can't deny that.
Just not to shoot.
But, and that's the thing. It's like, okay, I'm using this gun in bear country or whatever to protect myself, but if I can't practice enough to actually get good with it, no, I wonder, maybe that's not. The mountain gun, the thing I've always loved about it, it's the happy medium.
They carry so well.
They carry well, and if you get good leather, they actually carry a lot smaller and lighter than they want. I've got several holsters, and we're going to do a video on holsters that we like for mountain guns later. But I tell you, you take like a Simply Rugged sourdough pancake, and you cinch it up with a good heavy-duty gun belt, you really forget you're carrying that gun. Yeah. And it's tidy, but you got a lot of power at your fingertips, and it's very, very versatile. I really like it. And the good thing about using that tapered barrel is it's a one-piece barrel. It's not a two-piece barrel like most of the heavy barrel guns are now that are out there for Smith. So you kind of get that old classic style build. And you guys actually had to do a little more than meets the eye as redesigning this frame as well to make it all work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the barrel with what we currently had in our system with the current way we're manufacturing the barrels, there was a bit of design work required on getting this barrel to be right. Yeah. And particularly that top rib to make it where everyone was happy with the actual
Yep.
design. You know, we can talk later about the front sight pin as well, because that was another one of those.
And just to iterate where Andrew's going here, I get this all the time. Hey, why don't you guys get whoever, Ruger or Smith Wesson, whatever, to make this? They made it 30 years ago. They should be able to just make it. It's not the way it works.
Yeah.
You know, the way they're constantly changing the way they manufacture things. And so just because they made something, even sometimes 5 years ago, doesn't necessarily mean they can turn around and make it tomorrow. And they have to devote engineers to go in and redesign even a gun that they might have built 1 million of 20 years ago and go start from a clean sheet of paper.
Yeah, or think about the equipment that it was made
Yeah.
on back then.
Yeah,
That
totally
equipment's not
different.
even still in
No,
the
it's not even a building
Yeah,
anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, two-piece barrel is one good example of that, where there is that battle, shall we say, it's probably a strong word to use, but the debate between engineering and marketing with regards to the two-piece barrel is technically a superior mechanical design, but is that necessarily what the consumer wants?
Yeah.
And so,
On a classic gun, maybe not.
and a classic gun, maybe not. And for the mountain gun, with this lightweight profile barrel, we really can't do a two-piece barrel. So a one-piece was the only solution anyway for this particular case. But it is a good example. There's a lot that goes into it behind the scenes.
Right. Well, and just the way that this barrel mates up to the frame is different than a heavy barrel.
That's right. This
This
dedicated
frame is
for-
unique to
Yep.
a tapered barrel gun.
Yep, absolutely. We couldn't use, we could use the frame for a heavy barrel, but it's not going to look correct because the heavy barrel is going to be over the lines of the frame.
Right.
So,
And you also had to redesign a frame for the lock.
yeah.
That's
All
another.
right,
That's
we'll
another
get-
thing that I've heard for. Yeah. Let's just go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I can't. I've had $1 for every time I got an email or a call from a consumer that said, "Well, just tell them not to drill the hole." I'm
Yeah.
like, look, I'm not gonna get into their business, but it's not that simple.
No.
Right.
And look, and I've said this in public before, because of course everywhere I go, people ask me about the internal lock, and we can talk about it now. Of course, I've had to be pretty coy over the last 2 years about it, but I can honestly say on my very first day at Smith & Wesson, I think it was the second question I asked my boss on the very first morning: when are we getting rid of the internal locks? So, it's been in my head that that's something we needed to do, and I'm glad we're finally here. Yeah. But as you say, first of all, I had to convince people in the company that was actually a necessary requirement to do, and
Because it did require re-engineering this frame.
Re-engineering, and we're talking about, at the moment, there's only a limited number of guns we're going to have without an internal lock. LIPSEY'S have basically got it. We've got some of the classic guns, which are now, by the time this is going to be on live, we'll have the Model 10 without an internal lock release. But it's very limited because we do have to go in. There are mechanical internal changes we've had to do. I won't get into too much detail, but removing some of those components, well, we had to redesign some because there were certain aspects of the internal lock which we wanted to not keep the lock part of it, but there are other safety aspects that we wanted to keep in the design to make the gun a superior gun from its prior generations. And so having to redesign internally that, but keeping those parts, getting rid of the lock part, that did require engineering time. The initial solution that Brett Curry had come up with, when we put it through the assembly line to test how it was actually going to be assembled, we found that for the people in the assembly line, it was a little bit not optimal for assembly time and efficiency. So Brett had to redesign some of those internal components again, which sort of delayed the project a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it did require new frame design from scratch, new parts, and Smith & Wesson is very, very good at, and this is not just Andrew Gore saying this, they're actually very, very good at doing durability testing on everything we do.
Oh, for sure.
And so the actual guns had to then go through all the durability testing, or every time we changed a part, you have to re-go through the durability testing to make sure those parts are going to be correct. And so it's been a very involved process.
Yeah.
And now this frame is not the same frame as the current other revolvers we're manufacturing with which do have an internal lock.
But keep in mind, because I'll get these questions, just because that's it, holsters are still going to fit.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
In front, accessories, all that kind of stuff.
Externally, we're good.
Externally, if you got a rear sight you like to change out or whatever, that's still all the same. So they're, but the actual.
Some of the parts. I mean,
some of the parts internally.
Some of the internal parts.
You had to have a no hole in the side. The little slot where the flag would come up for the lock had to be eliminated and filled in. So just a lot of little different things there. But I'll tell you what, you guys did a great job on it. It's
they all did a great job on it.
Well, shout out to the Smith Wesson engineering team, which
they really did.
And Brett.
And they did it. And look, the great thing about this project, much like the UC project, all throughout the process, Andrew or Brett Curry were sending, hey, what do you think about this? Do you like this? We probably spent 3 or 4 days working on the front sight pin. Just to get it the way we wanted it. Because, a lot of the sight pins now are roll pins.
Yep.
And, it's just not a classic look on this gun. We wanted to give it that old school look. So Brett decided, well, let's do a solid pin. Let's do a roll pin. Not a roll pin, a solid pin. Yeah. And but it's not just as easy as just driving a pin in there. There's actually they did the testing to see how that was going to hold the front sight, and we went through back and forth the iterations of how long the pin could be and everything else, and
that comes back from that durability testing when you're shooting thousands and thousands of full power 44 Magnum.
Right.
Suddenly you start to find things out that you may not find for the average consumer who's only shooting 100, 200, maybe 1,000.
Yeah.
And so the reason that we used the roll pins in the first place was because it was found that they tend to, because of their flex, they actually flex in and sort of hold the front sight, generically speaking, better. Some of the solid pins, if you don't have some of the angles, et cetera, correct, they can snap. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of work done on making sure we get the solid pin that would actually be durable. And we always have the people who say, well, this has been done in the past. How come you can't do it today? And it's like, well, in the past it was hand fit. And so that fitter had the ability to sort of look at how that pin was going in, make sure it was correct. Where when you're talking on the assembly line, there are slight differences.
Sure.
The tolerances are very tight, but there still is a tolerance stack. And that can cause some issues. And
you have more sophisticated testing these days.
That's the other thing is was it done 40 years ago? Were they testing the same as we are today? Were the standards the same? Maybe, maybe not. It's sometimes it's hard to know because you don't it's not documented well as to exactly what certain things were done. So this front sight pin, as you said, we came out with a solution. One of the other challenges was because of how thin the top rib is, which is part of that taper design. That meant there was a very shallow distance for that pin in between each of the rib sides with the front sight. So it did require a lot of work just to get that right, to make sure it was
little details.
durable. Yeah,
little details.
And this is the thing, is the details, and for the people who know, and I think people are well aware of your standards, that one of the sort of more final versions, the pin was just a little longer than was ideal, and probably for a lot of people it wouldn't have been an issue, but it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
And so
you guys got it right.
Yeah. That's for me where I'm sort of trying to be Switzerland, keeping everybody happy. It's always nice to be able to lean and say, well, Jason's not quite happy with this. So
the thing is, it might take a little extra time up front, but in the long run, it's just going to make the gun that much more desirable, that much better. A guy can get it or a girl can get it and look at it and go, okay, they thought of it. It's kind of like we did with the UC project.
Yeah.
We really wanted to make it to where somebody picked that gun up and they could say, I really did think of everything. I can't really think of anything else that we would do with it. I mean, like the trigger face. I mean, we did smooth. We said, we don't want to serrate it because serrated triggers and lightweight 44 Magnums don't go together. You can do it once, but it's not fun.
Well, think about how long these are going to be around and what the plan is.
That's right.
On my other end of things, on the retail side, I travel around, I pick up gun collections all over the United States. I sell them. And occasionally I'll get a mountain gun or get some of these older Smiths, and they're super collectible.
Yeah. They're probably one of the first guns people ask about.
What's fixing to happen here?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I see something coming here that's potentially, 20, 30 years down the road.
Nothing would make me happier for these to be using guns today and heirloom guns tomorrow.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think that's the goal on this project. And
people ask us all the time, well, just because it's the, the most super cool, super rare revolver, say it's a registered Magnum.
Yeah.
Does that mean you don't shoot it? Absolutely not.
They're made to be
take
shot.
care of it, you treat it well, and you use it correctly, and you use it.
Right. I agree.
So,
I agree. They're not making any more of them.
Right.
Yep.
Maybe. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Hey,
whoa. Ping.
Yeah. No registered magnums.
Yeah.
But on the 686 version, they did do a couple of upgrades there too. And we haven't really talked much about the 357, but the 686 mountain gun, they made one run of those in the Plus, which is the 7-shot. Yeah. I believe it was in 1998. I got one. I ended up with one a few years back. Probably the most versatile revolver that I own, just because it's so easy to carry. That gun, I think we weighed one, it came out around 35 ounces. So it was actually it's actually an ounce lighter than my 4-inch vintage Model 19. A fantastic gun. 7 shots, tapered barrel, L frame, so it's a little bit smaller than the N frame. Great gun. Set it up kind of similar to my 629 as well. And absolutely love it. So we wanted to bring that one back too. We did actually do an exclusive back around 2005 on a 6-shot 686 mountain gun. But that one had a key lock. Mm-hmm. And I think we ran maybe 500 of them. It wasn't that many. And it sold okay, but it didn't do great. But the desirability of the original 7-shot no-lock mountain guns are out the roof. I mean, if you can find one for sale, they're usually, if you get one, under $1,800, you did pretty good, because you just don't come up very often for sale. And so we obviously wanted to bring that one back. And that gun will have the same feature set as the 629. The gold bead front, it'll have the bear hug grips, the flash chrome parts, the solid pin front, all the same. But you guys did do Brett Curry back in the mix. And he actually just couldn't leave it good enough and said, hey, we should really make this the toughest 686 357 that we've made. And Brett was the designer behind the Model 69 44 Magnum L frame.
And our current 66, which had the 2-piece barrel and the ball detent system.
Yeah. Yep. So tell us a little bit about what Brett did on the 686 mountain gun.
So Brett and I were having a conversation, I lose track of time, but 6 months or so ago. And part of it's in relation to, what's the future of Smith Wesson revolvers, and it's obviously a lively conversation internally because of all the projects we have, and amongst others. And I said, look, we've got in the 686, which is one of our most popular revolvers, we don't have in the standard line one of the ball detent lockups like Brett has done with the 69 and the 66. And I said to Brett, I'm assuming that is a mechanically superior design, which is why you designed it in the first place. And he said, well, that's a good assumption. That's correct.
Brett's very to the point.
Yeah. And so I said, well, we really need to look at when are we going to do that in the 686. I said, do you think that is the right way to proceed? And he said, yeah, I think at some point we do need to do that. And I said, okay, well, when we have the right project, let's do that. Let's get that in. But of course, that's a new frame. It's not the same frame as our current ones.
Right.
So, and for what we're talking about, for people who don't know, is where this is a lockup here on the traditional Smith & Wessons, the ball detent is actually in the yoke.
Yeah.
And so it's been a mad rush, obviously, getting these guns into production and getting it done ready for SHOT Show 2025. And so the first 686 prototypes come off the line, and I get sent a photo, and my boss, Grant, who said, just letting you know, it's actually got a ball detent lockup. It's like, my initial reaction was, well, that's fantastic, because once again, we're making progress. Like, this is the next evolution.
Right.
But my other part of me was like, Jason kind of wanted more of a classic gun. I hope this is going to be okay. Let me find out. So, well, you were obviously super happy.
Yeah, he calls me and says, "Hey, I got good news and maybe bad news. I don't know." And I was like, "All right, let me hit it." And he's like, "Hey, they put this ball detent lockup on here," and I'm like, "Awesome!
It makes it better, and you can't tell.
That's great." Hey, if anybody says anything, correct me if I'm wrong, Bobby, you know more than I do about triple locks, but triple locks had a lockup on the yoke as well.
They did.
So that's the original.
Yeah.
So to say that the ball detent is not classic is really a misnomer.
Yeah.
So I was super excited about it because, the 686 series of guns is I love 686s.
Yeah.
They're just sleek and everything, but they can handle. They were built to be a more durable model 66 and 19.
Yeah.
But even 686s, you pound them hard with a lot of real heavy 357 Magnum loads. They're going off to somebody like Bobby to get retimed or whatever else. And so to have one that is a superior lockup system, and I believe they actually beefed up the forcing cone area.
That's right. And what Brett had done with the original 66 and 69, when actually it's original, the current version as you see it today in the catalogue, with that ball detent lockup, there was also reinforcement in that barrel forcing cone area in the frame. And so effectively, a lot of people are aware if you shoot a significant number of full power 357s through a Model 19 or 66, you can get cracking in the original one-piece barrel designs, which is why the 686 came out, because there were law enforcement agencies back then who were shooting full power magnums and shooting a lot of them, and they were getting cracked forcing cones and frames. And so the 686 was a fix for that. It's a beefed up 1966. And what Brett did is, with the two-piece barrel design, he basically was able to, and with the ball detent lockup, create a reinforced area there which resolved it. So now the current Model 66 with the two-piece barrel and ball detent lockup effectively is just as durable as your traditional 686. And then when we came into the Model 69, which is in the L frame in 44 Magnum, once again we were able to go to 44 Magnum because of that reinforcement. So now Brett's added that to the 686 mountain gun, and so now you have a super heavy-duty 357 Magnum L-frame revolver.
And the 357 Magnum, I think, is kind of having a resurgence in popularity. I know for me personally, I went like 20 years just going, I'm over 357, it barks, it's too loud. If I want to shoot a small bore, I'll shoot a 32 or I'll shoot a 38 special. But I'm shooting 41 Magnums, 44s, 45 Colts. I just kind of skipped a 357. And it's funny, about 3 or 4 years ago, I was going through my gun room and I realized I've got more 357 Magnum revolvers than anything else. And I got to looking at the guns and realizing, man, that really is the sweet spot for a lot of people. We all talk about bear guns and everything else, but if you live in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, or maybe so.
You got brown bear.
Yeah. But for the most people, a 357 is really an ideal setup, and it's so versatile. And I'll be honest with you, we've learned a lot now. I mean, a lot of guys are shooting 10 millimeters now in bear country and whatever else. And a 357 Magnum, especially with 180 grain, you take a buffalo bore 180 grain wide flat nose, it's running about 1,200 feet per second out of a 4-inch gun. That's a 10 millimeter.
Yeah. And
so if you're a revolver guy and shooting, large bores, heavy loads is just something you're not good at or not comfortable with, a 686 mountain gun will give you we took that gun, I think it was 35 ounces, a 35 ounce gun. So it's basically like the weight of a K-frame 4-inch gun, but you've got L-frame strength plus
7 shots.
Yeah, you got 7 shots. You got a really slim gun that you can put round butt grips. It can be concealable. It can come with the square butts on there. You got a lot of versatility there, and you got the ability to go everything from those 180 grain buffalo bores down to 38 wad cutters.
Wad cutters, super light recoil.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it. I've often said, if I ever wanted to do the RV life thing and travel the country, I would take a 686 mountain gun and a lever action 357 rifle.
Yeah.
And that would be because you could do so much. You could defend yourself. You could hunt with it if you needed to. You could defend yourself against dangerous animals. And they're just fun to shoot. The ammunition's readily available. It's not super expensive. And you got a lot of versatility from, everything from a wad cutter at 800 feet per second to a, even double tap makes a 200 grain hard cast load. I think it's about 1150, 1200.
Wow.
So a lot of versatility there. So the 686 mountain gun, especially for somebody who's maybe wanting to get into revolvers, who hasn't been in revolvers, that's a great place to start.
Yep. And I think that is the thing is there are a lot of shooters out there now who revolvers are foreign to them.
Yeah.
They've only had limited exposure to them, haven't had a lot of hands-on shooting them just because we're currently living in that polymer striker-fired world when it comes to handguns. But we are seeing a resurgence now of interest in that. Maybe there's a little bit of exhaustion on the polymer striker-fired game.
I think it's a flood of people coming in.
Absolutely.
Honestly.
Yeah, and we've seen it in Libra actions as well.
Yeah, classic. Look, everything comes back.
Yeah.
It always does. We've seen it time and time again. I'm in this business 26 years, and stuff that had been dead is now popular again, and it just ebbs and flows. I mean, I look at the ebb. I'd love to actually chart out the sales graph on a 1911 pistol. It was pretty much dead when I started in 1998, and then got popularity, and then it went back down and back up, and now it's back down. It's just all over the place. But classic revolvers, I think, will always have a place in the market if they're executed correctly.
Yeah.
And I think,
and that's the thing is they feel
this gun is that
a
gun.
niche which a polymer striker-fired is not necessarily as good at.
Yeah.
For a field gun, arguably the revolver is going to be a better solution for a
It's
lot of people.
definitely
a lot
more
of the time.
versatile.
Yeah.
And the one thing about a revolver that you can't deny is that your trigger finger is what works the gun.
Yep.
The ammunition is what works the gun on an auto pistol.
Right.
So you have to use full power ammunition in a semi-auto pistol, whether you want to or not. With a revolver, I can take the 44 Magnum and I can put a 44 Special 210 grain lead flat nose in there, and I can hand that to a 10-year-old boy and let him shoot that gun, and he'll be just fine. The most recoil sensitive person there is. Or I can stick a 300 grain hard cast load in there at 1,200 feet per second. That's versatility that no auto pistol can have, and it can do it reliably, and that's the key. So
and, when you're out hunting, we all know that on a range, people will tend to shoot 5, 10, 15 yards. 20 yards is probably starting to push it for a lot of people, what they would normally do on a range. But if you're out in the field, you may find that there's an animal that you're hunting. Suddenly it's at 30 yards away. And for a lot of people trying to make that shot with a polymer striker-fired gun, it's not easy. But if you go into single action on a revolver, that's actually not that difficult shot for a lot of people.
It's funny you mentioned that. One cool thing about these modern Smiths is that they're all drilled and tapped underneath the rear sight. Like my original mountain gun made in 93 is not. So it's real easy to take one of the aftermarket mounts to put an RMR or to put a little red dot on this gun. Not my bag, but if it's that, or
totally
I can't,
doable.
But for somebody who wants to have a lightweight little gun that they could hunt with, especially people who, look, hog hunting is a huge thing, especially down where we are. Well, you too in Tennessee. And the great thing about a red dot is that barrel length, really take the barrel length accuracy thing out of the window because it's one plane. You're just looking at the dot. Whereas, even though a 4-inch gun is just as accurate as an 8 3/8-inch gun, the sight radius on the longer gun just makes getting hits easier. Right. But you eliminate that issue if you put a dot on something. So, while to me, it'd almost be sacrilegious to put a dot on a mountain gun. However, if it's between being able to use a gun or not, you at least have the ability to do it with this model. So,
and there are another number of companies that are offering those optics rail solutions. I don't know when the video is going to get launched, but Smith Wesson will be launching that as well, which we saw it already on the Jerry Mikulik revolver, and so that'll be a factory solution as well if you want to buy that Picatinny rail system.
That's
so,
awesome.
As you say, there is a lot of versatility there. And
we'll have to look at that for our Africa hunt.
That's what I was sitting here thinking. So I'm a shooter, a hunter, and a collector. and I have a gunsmithing background and a custom gun background. But I can tell you, without a doubt, I'm going to buy one of each of these for myself.
It's going to be an expensive year this
So
year.
what's next?
Well, that's probably the question a lot of people are going to ask. You know, well, are y'all stopping at the 629 to 686?
No.
No. We'll keep it a little close to the vest right now, but we know we've got a good thing here, and we know that we're going to have a lot of interest in this, and we know that there's a lot of other a lot of chamberings and calibers and configurations that people will think that they're desirable, and we'll think they're desirable too. So
44 Magnum and 357 were the right ones to start with.
It is those, especially the 44. The 44 is the iconic, it's the original. We kind of had to go there first, just because I think that's the way it should be. And let's face it, 357, 44 ammo, probably the two easiest to find out there. If especially for people who don't hand load. So we kind of wanted to make sure and put that foot out first. But we love all the calibers over at LIPSEY'S. We've been known to do 45 Colts and 41 Magnums and 10 millimeters and all kind of weird stuff. So you just never know what might pop up.
That's right.
So, but I know, hey, I'm super happy, guys. We couldn't have done this project, obviously, without Smith & Wesson. We couldn't have made this project elevated without Tyler GunWorks. All the pieces of the parts that came to this together, the fact that we were able to put this together in less than a year is really remarkable. And I really wish the people listening or watching would know how much work and effort and time and expense has gone into getting this gun to the market. And we really hope we got something that everybody will enjoy, something they can use, something they can take out of the box and have instant success with. And that's kind of the formula that we really want to do at LIPSEY'S, and having partners like you guys allows us to do that. So thank you for your contributions to it.
Well, special thanks to Bobby and Paige for stepping up, because
absolutely.
I mean, we've spoken a lot about the grips, but from a large manufacturer point of view, I mean, that's a massive undertaking that you guys took, and it was not something that we had a solution for. I mean, that's the thing is, Jason and I were talking, and we're like, I don't know how we're going to get this done, because we don't have a solution. I can't get a company to deliver what we need. And then to do it in a year, that sounds like a long time.
From zero.
For a lot of people, but it's insane speed. And all the trial and tribulations of the fit, because our frames are hand polished still, and so that creates a little bit of difference in the actual tolerances and trying to get grips to fit. I mean, it's been a huge undertaking. We've had to go back with multiple variations to try and get the fit quite to be where it's as perfect as it can be, and massive undertaking. And I can tell you that when I talk to Bobby, he's been, at times you can tell he's been a madman, working extremely hard, not probably getting much sleep at all, trying to get it done. But we're here.
And we did it.
That's what's important.
And did it at a price that's honestly remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so proud of the fact that we were able to do it at a price that I think when people go to the gun store and look at the price tag and go, wow.
It's a good value.
It's a
for sure.
great value. Yeah. Trust me. After customizing my mountain guns, it's a fantastic value. Yeah. And so I'm super happy with it. Bobby, tell us, how do people get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
So our website is tylergunworks.com. We've got a store on there. We sell some of our own products. Eventually we'll have some grip products in, and that's the best way to catch it.
Can they find you on social media as well?
Yeah, we do have some social media. You never know how that is from day to day, honestly, but our website's constant, and anything you see in stock is an actual picture of that item.
That's great.
And it is the actual item, and most things ship same day.
Fantastic.
They take good care of me there.
Great. Well,
And
thank you.
Just to clarify, they can buy the grips from you online?
At a certain point, go to my website. When you see them there, you can buy them.
Yeah, if they're on there, they're for sale.
Yeah.
So.
I just say that because of the UC experience where that was a big thing.
And obviously, I've got to tell you, the best value is to buy them on the revolver. Yeah. But say you get this and you get home and you just say, I have to have round butt grips for mine. I want a round butt variation of this. Quite possibly we'll have them on our website.
Just keep checking the website daily.
Yeah.
Because you might find grips, but I can promise you, you'll find some cool guns on there for sale. If you're looking for something that's unique, he's out scouring the country, buying collections, getting really nice stuff in. And I tell you, I'm always on there. It's like, shopping, looking, and there's always something on there. It's like, oh man, that buy now button's looking pretty good. So, but anyways, check out TylerGunWorks.com. Andrew, obviously Smith & Wesson. Everybody knows where to find Smith & Wesson, but
and you can Google and it'll pop straight up first one. But yeah, smith-wesson.com.
Yeah, and you guys will be having some content on these guns as well. So, well, thank you both. You know where to find us, LIPSEY'S.com to find more information. Check out our socials, Lipsey's Guns on Facebook, Instagram, X, and go to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel, we're putting out a lot of great content on there. Like, subscribe, share it. The more that we get, the better the algorithms work, and we get on there. But if you like this gun, go check out with your dealer, man. Get one on order. Look, they're going to be tough to get at first because anything worth having is going to be hard to get at first. But it'll be worth the wait. We put a lot of effort into making this gun right. I'm super proud of this project. I'm super happy to bring a gun that basically is the gun that I grew up with. This is it's an iteration that I ended up with after 30 years of carrying and shooting this gun, and now we can offer it to you out of the box at a great price. So go check it out. Hope you get one. Let us know how you like it, and until next time, aim higher.